right, welcome back to the Cheerful Sound Man. We have another great question today, and this was actually kind of a hard one. Not hard. It was hard to narrow it down. So the question is, what or who inspired me to do what I do and get into production, and what inspires me today as well. So initially, I'll start with my initial inspiration for getting into production was I played music. I played in bands, played guitar, bass, drums, different bands. And it wasn't really inspiration as much as necessity and a desire to learn. But basically we were playing small venues and clubs that were not really even venues. So we played a coffee shop in St. Augustine all the time that had it could fit 75 people or something like that. And started needing to bring more and more elements of sound and more and more elements of production. So that was kind of the initial piece in recording our band. And then as I did that, I started to then pay attention to what others were doing that were actual professionals at it. And so that was kind of my initial impetus or inspiration for getting into production. But then as I got into production, I went to school for theater and started working on the side for a local sound man here who had kind of the regional company since the 80s until my now partner bought him out. That was Pete Theoctisto with Everyman Sound Company. And he was a real pioneer in the area, and back from making a lot of his own speakers and components to really pushing forward with different presets and measurements. He's a very, very smart guy, with those aspects before the industry was at the point where those things were readily available. A lot of that stuff, the guys in the field like him had to actually learn and figure out by trial and error. And, a lot of science and math as well. And then a different time frame to the 80s and 90s doing sound was very Wild West in a lot of ways. And, a lot of things were make your own. Like there were not off the shelf solutions for a lot of things, everything from mounting and flying speakers to even just electrical solutions. You brought a whole bunch of equipment into a venue. You had to tie into an electrical panel. We don't do any of that anymore. We have ready-made solutions. We have cam locks installed, or there's various ways to do it. But it's changed and evolved for the better. But these guys were really, I view these guys that were in the 80s, 90s. Also Larry Schmidt, who we just bought his company, Production Support Group, at the beginning of this year in Tallahassee. Same deal. Started in the 80s. Came out of a theater background and just really had to pioneer and kind of invent. Those guys really invented this industry that didn't even exist before that, as far as large scale production and sound reinforcement. It's wild kind of how young the industry is. It all kind of really started to bud around the time I was born in 81. Early 80s is when it really became a thing. Before that, it was some large scale touring and things like that, but it was very, very limited. You either had one of those big rigs like you were out with Led Zeppelin or Van Halen or one of those big massive groups, or there was almost nothing, and there was not much in between. So those guys inspired me a lot more, from the way they just did it. They just jumped into it, got their hands dirty, and figured out solutions. And there's such a cool, our industry has such a cool history of that, of on the fly engineering, figuring things out, seeing a problem and finding a better solution. It's actually one of the coolest things we still do is we collaborate and we have people come up with, oh, well, we want to put LED wall panels this way, but we can't mount them there. How do we do that? And there's a lot of problem solving and things involved. So a really big inspiration was those guys. There's some others too, but those are kind of the two that are directly in my life and purview as well. And so those would be big inspirations. Also, if I go to kind of current me, where we are as a company, multiple branches. I think we have hundreds of thousands of items now. We were doing our inventory the other day. The numbers are very big of the quantity of items we have, to track. So now some of my inspiration or, what I strive to be like is some of my friends now in the industry that many of them we've met through the PK Alliance for PK speakers that we are a part of. So like Chip Self with Logic Systems in St. Louis, so big shout out there. We work back and forth with them a good amount, but he's a big inspiration. He's, I would say, kind of the next step up from us size-wise as far as a regional company goes. We're on his heels though. We're going to catch you, Chip. Just kidding. But big inspiration with what he's been able to do. I think, I would say, I think he's about 10 years ahead of me in life and in business. The regional companies, these bigger companies that are just kind of that next step is a lot of my inspiration. Maybe I should dream bigger because I do have bigger dreams and bigger plans than that. But those are the folks I'm looking up to now, as well as like our friend Hyacinth Belcher with Onstage Systems in Dallas. So giving some personal friend shout outs here. These are friends of mine that we've gotten to work alongside with that are, again, just a few years ahead of me, not too far ahead of us in time in the industry, and but have really paved the way and made some really amazing strides for being independent small companies. As you know, in our world, everything from Amazon to every industry has these larger corporations that have swallowed up a lot of the little guys. In production, it's Solotech has swallowed up a lot of the little guys over the last couple of years. By all accounts, they seem to do a great job and be a great company. So no knock to that, but it becomes increasingly impressive to be able to stay independent and profitable and grow without being under the umbrella of Solotech or 4Wall or PRG or any of these massive corporations that also have lots of private equity money behind them and those type of things. And so a big part of it is looking up to them and being inspired from a business perspective. So that's personal inspiration. A kind of follow up to that question too, or to that answer, is big inspiration right now too. I'll give another personal shout out to my partner, John Pop. He's really pushed me on. I will tend to, while I want to push the envelope, I will tend to be the practical one in a lot of designs and situations and want to dial it back because a certain design or layout is going to be more practical to achieve. But one thing I love about him and my partner, and something that's pushed our company quite a bit, is he'll basically not allow me to settle for that, for not going as hard or not doing it if we can. So he does, obviously there's a point and we say, okay, there's not budget for that, or that's a bit too much, or whatever the case is. But he really kind of continues to push me to be able to do that.